Well met by moonlight, dear ones. I'm Curiosity, and this is my jamboree, a firelit gathering for explorers of the uncanny, the frightening, and the hard to explain. Tonight, we spin tales of curious crucifixes, possible serial killers, and more. So settle in by the crackling fire, lean in close, give your tent pegs one last glance to make sure they're steady, and let's begin. Our first story is from r/creepy encounters, shared by UR38. This has been going on in my neighborhood for about 2 weeks now. It has me sufficiently creeped. So I live alone. I'm 28 and female. This is also why I'm more alarmed than the average person might be. So a couple of weeks ago, I'd opened my mailbox to find a small wooden crucifix on a string. I didn't know who it was from. The church occasionally leaves things in mailboxes, but also provides like a pamphlet or something to explain. This was just a small wooden crucifix necklace. I just grabbed it along with the rest of my mail and put it in the house. While having wine one night, my neighbor, also my best friend, mentioned that she'd found a crucifix in her mailbox. Neither of us thought much of it again. Didn't seem like the biggest deal in the world. A few days had passed, and I started getting mysterious phone calls. Mysterious in the sense that the same number would call, would stay on the line, but wouldn't say anything. In the background I could hear what sounded like a TV or a radio, so I know the line was okay. They just didn't say anything. My friend mentioned that she'd received a few anonymous phone calls as well, with the same phenomenon. Things got creepier when another girl we know mentioned finding a crucifix in her mailbox, and receiving a phone call, same as us. While my friend and I were driving to go out one night, she got a call from the same number. She answered it, and told them to stop calling us. Once again, there was no response. By the time we got to our destination, we'd both received a text message. Hers read something along the lines of, "Words hurt. Learn to love." The text message I got read, "The human heart is the strongest organ in the body. Why do you have to fuck with it?" With a photo of a cartoon heart. We were both scared, but stayed and hung out like we planned, because neither of us wanted to go home alone. We talked about it until our friends got there with us. We kind of played around with the thought that it was a prank by one of our friends, but we became less sure. So for sure, 2 other girls from our town received crosses in their mailbox, and also received phone calls. We know one of them, though not very well. The other one neither of us knew. The only reason she found out was because she had a video on her social of her ranting about it, and it got shared. So things got a little weirder when my friend came over to my house and showed me that she bought a new set of nipple rings. Yeah, just hear me out. The pack they came in was opened, removed, and replaced with a small wooden crucifix. After this, we called the police and gave our statement. They said because it was spooky season, it was probably just a joke. This seemed to me like it was an excuse not to follow up. Now there was one thing that threw me off, but it was worth noting. So I figured originally that whoever was doing this and calling us was probably someone that we all knew. We even went on the Facebooks of people that had received them to see if we could find the common denominator, but turned up nothing. I'm a hairdresser by trade. My friend is a tattoo artist. One of the other girls sells real estate, and the other is an accountant. The common factor is that all of our info is made public for business reasons. I'd like to think this is just someone trying to get into the Halloween spirit, and found a bunch of public information. That'd still be creepy enough on its own, but I've been on guard for almost 2 weeks now. The whole thing just feels so ominous. Everyone, please be careful. Practical jokes are one thing, and I hope this does turn out to be harmless, but it's a shame the police didn't take mail tampering seriously. Seems like that's the sort of thing that could escalate. Our next story was shared by Trackstar. I was working late one night at a secluded office about 1 kilometer from any other buildings and surrounded by forest. I occasionally stayed late and would be the last car in the parking lot. This night I locked up, walked down the trail to the parking lot, and as I exited the trail, noticed that there was another car in the lot. Despite the large size of the parking lot, it was parked directly next to mine. There would be no reason to park in this lot unless you worked at this building, or were attending an event there. A man stepped from behind the car, looking at me. He was a white man, probably average height, slender, with brown, medium-length, curly hair. He was staring at me with his chin down and a very serious, predatory look. I stopped walking. He was probably 10 or 15 meters away from me. I debated returning to the office, but if this man had bad intentions, I doubted I could run back, get my key out, and open the door without him catching up. I decided to walk to my car and act normal. I said, "Hello, how's it going?" in a calm and confident tone while walking towards my car. He walked in a semicircle around me and just stared at me without a change in expression. I kept him in my line of vision and made it to my car, unlocked it, got in, and locked the door very fast. He just stood there. I drove home feeling a little spooked, but wrote it off as just a weird encounter. Maybe he was high, who knows. I called the on-site security. Normally they would be at the main buildings a kilometer away and don't actively patrol where my office was. I told them about the encounter, and they said they'd go check it out. I never heard back, nor did I follow up. I went home. I lived with roommates and we never locked our doors. One was out of town and the other was at work until late, and usually stayed over with her boyfriend, so I didn't expect anyone. I went about my evening routine as normal and got ready for bed a few hours after the whole parking lot encounter. Just after I'd gotten into bed, I heard footsteps coming up the old, creaky wooden stairs. The footsteps continued down the hall towards my room, but stopped just short. The floors were creaky in this house, and you could hear any movement, so no sound meant someone was just standing next to my door for what felt like 30 seconds. I was totally silent and had 911 typed into my phone ready to call. I heard a cell phone notification from where the person was outside my room, and then the footsteps went back down the stairs. I texted my roommates. The one who was at work called me confirming it was not her, and that yes, the other was still out of town. I asked her to stay on the phone, and I checked the house. Went into all of the rooms upstairs. Nothing. Went downstairs, and the front door was open. I closed and locked it, and checked the rest of the house, including the creepy basement. All clear. I heard back from my other roommate. Neither of them were expecting anyone. I dismissed it as someone who was drunk, it was a Friday, walking into the wrong house. I'd heard a story of a friend who did that once and woke up at his neighbor's place. This all happened in 2014. I thought it was a little weird that both of these incidents occurred on the same night, but never connected the two. It was during my last month living in this place before moving across the continent. Fast forward to 2020, where I watched Unbelievable, where a serial killer talked about how he stalked his victims and was often in their houses multiple times before doing anything, and sometimes stalked people and never actually did anything. The more I thought about it, the more I think I was targeted by someone who knew my patterns. Perhaps someone who was planning something for the first time and couldn't follow through. Do you think these two incidents were connected? Considering how this kind of thing isn't exactly an everyday occurrence for most people, having two strange encounters in the same day is definitely cause for alarm. I'd say the idea they're connected isn't that outlandish. I'm glad you came out of it okay. Our next story is from Karma Electrifying. I've been exotic dancing for a long time along with a day job, despite what a good number of our customers think, except for a few regulars. I'm actually 46. Both my son and daughter are grown. Daughter is 23, son is 21. I've literally never kept stripping from my family. I started it to provide for them and put my way through community college. They both know and they're both cool with it. So one of my son's friends came into my club tonight. He's the same age as my son. They're not like best friends, but definitely friendly enough to where I know him and have talked to him in the past when he was over. I was not in the best state of dress at the time. All I had on were my bottoms. I was moving out of VIP when I walked past him. He said hi and I smiled and said hi back. My goal was to just shoot past him and leave the situation. He attempted to give me a hug, kind of already an over-the-line move considering where we were and what I was/wasn't wearing. I just put my arms out and said I was covered in sweat and felt gross. Then he says, "Never thought I'd run into you here," which I sort of assumed was a false statement. I just sort of nodded it off and kept making "leaving now" body language. Then this dumb motherfucker says, "I don't guess I can get you for a VIP dance." I made it known on my face that was not cool. I told him that didn't seem appropriate. He then showed me a wad of cash that he was carrying loose in his pocket. I once again declined, and told him it would be best if he found another girl. We were surprisingly busy for a Tuesday night, and he could have had his pick of many beautiful young ladies. He said he wouldn't tell my son, to which I replied once again that he needed to find a different girl. Eventually he took the hint when I went to the locker room. To play it safe, I got dressed and left. Didn't make the bag that I wanted, but it seemed like the right call to make. The whole drive home, and even now, it infuriates me. Not ashamed in the slightest about dancing, but coming over to me when you know my son is a big violation of trust and friendship. I could only imagine what he would have told my son. I swear he could have pulled out any amount of money and the answer would still be no. Fast forward to yesterday. I had told my son about the encounter. I felt it was best for him to hear it from me. He agreed that it was wrong for him to do that, but didn't say much else. He just looked like he felt betrayed. I get that. But he came over to my house yesterday and started throwing a tantrum because his friend had apparently told his other friends that he saw my tits, which he technically did, and that I had spent all night grinding on him in VIP. An obvious lie. It took some doing, but my son eventually listened to reason. My daughter's boyfriend had caught wind of this and called this guy to get him to shut up. When he didn't get an answer, he drove over to the guy's parents' house to look for him, but once again, had no luck. I didn't want him to get in trouble for hurting this guy, but even I'll admit I wanted this guy dealt with. He made me so angry. So last night we had a costume contest at our club. It was highly advertised in our area. Lo and behold, who walks in? I wanted to strangle him, to be honest. When he saw me, he looked at me, smiled, and nodded. I went over to one of the bouncers that I've always been friendly with, and requested that he be removed. Thankfully, it didn't take much convincing. I just told him that he was hassling me and my son. He was removed from the club and put on a ban list, so he's not allowed to come to the club anymore, which only does me a little bit of good, to be quite honest. Anyway, I hope everyone is having a good weekend and staying safe. Well, OP, that's very unpleasant. I'm glad your family are so supportive, and that you have people at work looking out for you. More people need to learn that folks in the entertainment industry have a right to go about their day unharassed, no matter how much they wear at work. Our last story is from TO0. I live in a city located in a valley with a lot of smaller towns up the hills and mountains around, so it's part of the local culture for teenagers and young adults to visit these smaller areas during the winter to drink, smoke weed, and hang out with their friends. My uncle bought a house in one of these areas, so eventually I decided to get the keys and spend my weekend there with 5 of my friends. The house has 2 big bedrooms, with 3 beds each and a lot of extra mattresses. At night we decided at some point to go back inside and just chill watching TV. But since the living room has no sofas yet, we brought some mattresses from our bedrooms and just used them. One of my friends, Victor, decided to go out to smoke, and after some minutes we hear someone knocking at the window just behind us. Everyone got scared for a second, but just looked at the window and said things like, "Oh shit, it's just Victor." But since we were sitting on mattresses close to the ground, it wasn't easy to see clearly who was at the window. And because the person just stood there looking straight at one of the girls, I got up to check. I saw a man who somehow looked a lot like my friend, but a bit fatter and older than him. As I came to the conclusion that it was a stranger, I froze while looking at him and him looking back at me. When I said, "It's not Victor," everyone else also froze and looked at me waiting for a reaction. But all I could think was to ask what he wanted. He just stood there for a second and asked, "There's a bar nearby and we need a drummer to play with our band. Is any of your friends a drummer by any chance?" Which, weirdly enough, I am. But I just told him no, and after some extra long seconds looking at us, he left. My friend came back and we made fun of the situation, making jokes on how it was him messing with us, etc. Later, most of the group decided to sleep in one bedroom and leave the second for me and one of the girls, since they saw us kissing earlier. We all go to bed, but some hours later I wake up to the girl shaking me in horror and whispering that she heard something coming from the kitchen. So I get up, tell her to lock the bedroom when I leave, and go check the sound like the moron who always dies first in films. As I pass by the second bedroom, I think about calling someone else to join me, but as soon as I see them all sleeping, I hear something at the kitchen window. I quickly move there in silence, check around, and as soon as I find and grab a knife, the door opens right in front of me. It was the same guy. I knew it was no joke since I just saw my friend sleeping. It probably took like 5-10 seconds of us staring at each other, but it felt like an eternity. While still holding the door handle, he made a slow movement with the other hand towards something under his shirt, which was probably a gun or knife, but I also lifted my hand, showing him the knife, so he stopped. The kitchen was quite small, so we were standing pretty close to each other, and at this point, we both knew it would end bad for both of us if he tried something, so I just shook my head and said as calm as I could, "Don't." He just kept staring at me a bit more, and then finally closed the door and went away. I went back, told the girl it was nothing, that we should go back to bed. I didn't sleep that night. We left early in the morning, and I made sure to ask my uncle and cousins if they ever received weird visits there. He said that the only person who ever goes there at night is the old neighbor when his wife doesn't let him arrive drunk at home, so he grabs my uncle's rocking chair to sleep until he gets sober. Now, every year, my friends talk about spending another weekend there, but I always make an excuse so we never go through that again. They never knew what happened. The sun is rising, and the early morning breeze has the lake lapping against the shore. The jamboree is at an end once more. My thanks to everyone who sent in stories, or gave me permission to narrate theirs. Remember, I upload new stories on Mondays and Fridays, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have any thoughts about the stories I've narrated, why not leave them in the comments below? And don't forget, if you enjoyed your time by the fireside, to help the cursor orienteer its way to the like button. If you'd like a story of yours narrated, I have a submission form linked in the description, and I would love to learn more of your curious experiences and unexplained happenings. I will see you soon, dear ones, and until then may your nights be dark and your dreams just a little curious.